last time, we're talking about designing a complete strength routine, this time focusing on the upper body. Peter, if you could pick 2 upper body patterns to do for the rest of the year, what would you pick?
Well, I'm a big fan of relative strength patterns. So where I have to move my body weight. And kind of a fun little thing I started when my son was younger was what are some things I can do with him as a part of my body for as long as possible. So two things
Nice.
that would fit well is a pull up with him being a monkey hanging on me, which I'm there. It's starting to get pretty dang hard, but I could still do it. And then secondly, doing like a push up where I have him kind of sitting on my upper back and being able to maintain that stiffness and do that full range through that upper shoulder complex. What about
Boom.
yourself?
Those are good too. I'd say the pull up as well. I just love like the full range of motion, shoulder stretch I get at the bottom. That's just a perfect pulling upper body pattern. I'd probably go with a one arm dumbbell overhead press. Again, full range of motion for the shoulder, some good core stability challenges to not lean back or lean away with that. I just feel like I'm at a strongman competition whenever I do that one. So just a personal
Oh, I
favorite
love it. I
as
love that.
well.
I love that visual.
Yeah, yep. Just the old timey mustache, singlet, pressing a big rounded end dumbbell overhead. Classic. So
Yeah, those
those are
guys, insane.
those are my 2. Let's go into our talk today. What are our main topics today? Mirroring the lower body strength talk. What movement patterns need to be included in a complete upper body strength routine? What things have to be there to get that stamp of approval from us saying that, yeah, that's a good upper body strength program? And then what else might you do? And what parameters should you follow based on your specific goals? Okay. So quick sidebar. We gave the same sidebar in the lower body talk. We're going to do it again real quick. We use full body sessions with the vast majority of our clients for 4 main reasons. We did a full talk on this that you could go back and find in our podcast thread. It fits better with the schedule and consistency with most people to do full body sessions. They're training 2 or 3 times a week. They're probably going to miss a session a month because something random comes up. If you miss your only upper body day that week, well, now I didn't train upper body until for 2 whole weeks, right? If I miss one full body day, well, I still had a well-rounded week, just with a little less frequency. That's far and away the biggest reason, but there's also mobility benefits to moving all the major joints in your body more often, recovery benefits to not destroying your chest with 15 sets in one session a week. Not that you can't do that. You just might be better off spreading that out. And then there might be some hypertrophy and strength benefits from higher frequency routines. If I'm going to do, we'll use that same chest example, 15 sets of chest. If I do 3 different days with 5 sets of chest, I might push those sets harder than the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th set on that one chest day where I'm just fried by that time. And then strength-wise, there might be benefits to practicing the bigger lifts more often with a little more recovery, as opposed to, destroying yourself one day and then not doing it again for a while. So all that to say, we're not designing the perfect upper body workout today, but instead we're talking about what upper body strength patterns and parameters should be present over the course of your training week, regardless of whether you're doing full body sessions, upper body, lower body split sessions, whatever your schedule looks like, right? So thanks for hanging out for that disclaimer. Let's now get to the meat of it. What are the must-do upper body movement patterns? Number 1, pushing stuff away from you. These mainly work your chest, your shoulders, your triceps, depending on what exactly you're doing, what angle you're pressing at, but those are going to be the major primary movers involved in these lifts. Pulling things towards you is our second must-do upper body movement pattern. So whether it's grabbing a weight and pulling it towards me, or doing some sort of cable variation, or Peter pulling himself and Eli up to the bar there, pulling something towards you. These are mainly going to work your lats, the muscles around your shoulder blades, your scapular muscle, your biceps. Those are the primary muscles involved in those patterns, right? So, 2 images we just put up on the screen. I'm doing a dumbbell press, laying on my back on a 30-degree bench. I'm pressing those weights up to the sky. And then I flipped around. I'm now laying face down on that bench. I'm pulling the weights back towards me. Just by flipping myself around there, I'm doing the 2 different major upper body movement patterns there, right? In the lower body talk, we talked about how squat to hinge was a spectrum, right? Some patterns are somewhere in the middle. Push and pull, that's not the case. These really are opposite movements, right? Where I'm using muscles on the front side of my body to do the pushes and the back side of my body to do the pulls. So these are really more clearly either or in one camp or the other. Okay. Let's talk about push variations. So we're going to split them mainly into horizontal and vertical presses. For horizontal presses, think of, things where your bench is 0 to 45 degrees and you're laying on your back pressing up dumbbells or a barbell. Push-ups would be another classic one that fits in this category here. These are more chest driven than vertical patterns, right? In your vertical presses, think of having a bench at 60 to 90 degrees and pressing dumbbells or barbells up overhead. Or you might just be freestanding or kneeling, something where my torso is vertical and pressing up overhead. Might be doing a landmine press where a barbell is fixed into a landmine attachment, or just the corner of your gym and you're pressing one end of the barbell up overhead. All these things where you are reaching the arm up above shoulder height. These are more shoulder driven, and the shoulder blades move a little bit differently during these patterns, basically to develop a well-rounded shoulder, not just aesthetically, but also to shoulder health. You want to be able to do presses in both of these different directions, right? Pulling variations, same thing. We can split them into horizontal and vertical directions. Our horizontal pulls are generally known as rows because it looks like someone rowing a rowboat, right? You can do these with dumbbells. You can do them with a cable machine. You can do them like chest supported, where you're laying down on a bench, or some certain machines might have a pad for you to put your chest against, so you can just focus on driving and pulling the weight towards you. These are more upper back driven. Okay, so using those muscles in between my shoulder blades to really pull my shoulder blades and shoulders back to initiate that movement. And then vertical pulls, like pull-ups and pull-down variations, those are more driven by your lats. Now, your lats and upper back are involved in both of these, just like your chest and shoulders are involved in all the pushes. It's vertical to horizontal is more of a spectrum, but just know that over the course of your week, you're gonna want to mix in different angles of your pulls and presses.
We kind of like to have a balance. So generally, there's more musculature involved pushing away than there is pushing overhead. So there's kind of look at ratios that we're looking to do. And some people love more of those mirror muscles, so they might be a little bit more imbalanced. That shoulder joint is moved so much and it's so mobile. So what can we do to stabilize that joint really well, where it's fairly equal with what's going one direction and what's going the other direction? So that those are kind of all things that we'll put into programming, that it fits all these categories that Kyle just talked about. Even I love to take a picture of yourself, when you're just in normal posture. What do you look like? What do you look like you do more movements of? What do you feel like you might need more movements to get you back into that ideal position?
At the simplest level, a complete upper body strength routine is one that includes both of these foundational movement patterns, and ideally in a balance, like Peter said. I remember my first well done strength routine was from a friend's uncle who programmed for us. And once he stopped, I just added in an extra bench day because I wanted to get stronger at benching. So I did another day, twice as much pushing as I was pulling. And then I started working in a physical therapy clinic, and I was helping demonstrate some patterns for this Parkinson's class. And the PT had me try to demonstrate thoracic rotation, like rotating your shoulders, and I could barely do it. And she's like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. Let me instead." I was not doing it, and I am
That's awesome.
So have both a good balance of pushing and pulling in your routine, right? So an example full body routine, if you're just starting out with us, would be, hey, maybe day one, maybe we're doing a 30-degree dumbbell press and a seated row. That's a good like horizontal push and pull that day. And then on the other day, might do more of like a 75-degree dumbbell press, more vertical, and a pull down, a more vertical pull. That's a great, simple, 2 patterns to pick each day and for your upper body routine to start. If you're doing a full body pattern, you'll have a squat and a hinge on each of those days as well. If you're just starting out, keep it simple. 3 to 4 sets, 6 to 12 reps, probably a good place to start. Does that look like something similar to what you've done with your newbie clients, Peter?
100%. Keep it simple, make them repeatable. I love that kind of antagonist where one almost mirrors the other, just flipped it on its back. If you played it and like you flipped it upside down, you're like, wait, are you pressing or are you pulling? I can't tell, so 100%.
Yep. So now taking it further, say you've got your basics set, you're ready to kind of dial it up a little bit. Just like we did with the lower body routine, we're going to talk about the 3 main variables that we can emphasize. So number 1, mobility and injury prevention. Number 2, hypertrophy, building muscle mass. And number 3, strength. Okay, let's talk about mobility and injury prevention first. The shoulder is the most mobile and therefore least inherently stable joint in the body. That's the trade-off we make to be able to, throw a spear at a mammoth with our arm up overhead. I can't move my hip like that, the way I can move my shoulder. That we sacrifice stability there. If you look at a skeleton, your shoulder's like barely on there skeletally. It's a golf ball on a tee, whereas your hip is more of a ball, more inside a socket comparatively, right? So we want to build up strong, stable shoulders as a result, right? So we're going to train at end range. and improve stability of that joint. So let's go through some examples of what training at end range for your shoulders is. Deep push-ups and dips, really open up the front of your chest. They get the arm back behind you. That's shoulder extension and kind of mobilizing the front of your pec. A lot of people are really stiff in the front of your chest, right? So gaining the ability to get into deeper positions there is great. If you don't have that range, these things might be too aggressive right away, but working towards that is a good goal, right? Being able to do full range pull-ups and pull downs, getting the arm all the way overhead. That's a great loaded stretch to your lats, improving your ability to get the arm overhead, known as shoulder flexion. Doing overhead pressing that improves your stability up overhead, right? So again, within the range you have, if you don't have the range to get all the way overhead right now, well, I'm not going to be able to press a heavy dumbbell up there without compensating and leaning back. But as you gradually improve your range, you want to improve the ability to press in whatever range you have. So maybe you're working on an inclined bench at first and gradually getting more towards being up overhead. And then rows, although rows themselves aren't really an end range pattern, they improve your posture. They strengthen a lot of the stabilizing musculature back behind your shoulder blades and your rotator cuff. And they're going to open you up in a way that allows you to get into more positions, even if those patterns specifically aren't really end range patterns. So what do you notice here? We got horizontal pushes and vertical pushes. We got horizontal pulls and vertical pulls. So even just these big rock patterns already do so much for your shoulders. For the shoulder joint specifically, I wanted to also mention some other things you might do. You might do some other stability challenges like isolation work to your upper back or rotator cuff if you just need a little extra attention in those areas. You also might do challenges where there's a compressive force on your shoulder. Something is trying to make you collapse and you're pressing back. Things like planks, lateral planks, bear crawls, Turkish get-ups, where there's some sort of compressive force that you are kind of trying to control and stabilize to try to keep that golf ball on the tee despite the force acting upon you. And then there's distractive stability challenges, things where there's something is trying to pull that arm out of the socket, essentially, like carries and hangs. Can I do a loaded carry holding heavy weight? Can I hang onto a bar? Can my shoulder stabilize that motion? Right. So those are great things to mix in to warm-ups, etc. Right. So big takeaway, have a good balance of push and pull, right? Don't be like me in the first 2 years of college. And then have extra stability challenges as warm-ups or finishers as needed. That's going to be a great recipe for building up some mobile and stable shoulders.
And just to kind of highlight that compression aspect, so much of that is, again, part of our fundamental development when we were young, when we were a child. And that's one thing that I see so many people getting away from because it's not cool. It's not on, social media or whatever, but those fundamental things and learning how to create that stability in the shoulder and making it do its job is one of the safest things you can do to make your shoulders a lot more resilient, besides all the other stuff we've talked about. But don't take that stuff for granted. Mix it in. Like we said here, it can be a part of your warm up, can be a part of your finisher. It can be something you do with your kids, but it's just so important for optimal shoulder health.
Yeah. I just like the line, again, injury occurs when demands exceed capacity. Let's build up capacity. Can you resist whatever gravity is trying to do to you right now? Do you have the ability to resist the force acting upon you? So our program might look like having a push and pull each day. Maybe we're picking patterns specifically that kind of take you through a deeper range of motion, like a deep push up, an overhead press, a pull up, a row where that shoulder and shoulder blade get to move. And then maybe we're mixing in some kind of prehab isolation work or planks or carries into the warm-up section of the day as well, right? So moving on to hypertrophy. Say the main goal is building muscle mass, which for many people in the upper body, that's a big goal for them, right? Volume is the main variable, the volume in terms of sets per week that sends the signal to build muscle mass. So we're just going to do more sets, right? We're still going to start with push and pull because, again, those are big compound movements. Those involve a lot of musculature. We're going to start there. And then you might add isolation work as desired for more volumes. Now, you might do some extra bicep curls and tricep pushdowns, even though those muscles were involved in the other lifts you were doing already. You might add in shoulder flies for a little extra shoulder volume, etc. Right? People can generally tolerate more upper body volume than lower body volume in their day. You don't have to feel guilty for doing a little more upper body work than lower body work, as long as you're still doing some. Don't take that advice and run with it. But it's just a little less neurologically demanding because it's just more locally fatiguing. Whereas like a big heavy squat, like pretty much every muscle in your body is involved in that. So although the lower body is the primary mover, it's a little bit more taxing to do, 5 heavy sets of squats than 5 heavy sets of push-ups, right? So generally, people can tolerate a little more upper body volume than lower body.
So many people, when they do other things outside of the gym, what do? They're walking, they're hiking, they're going upstairs, they are getting on a bike. All these things tend to involve that lower body musculature to a much greater degree than that upper body. So again, kind of go along with that. You can tend to tolerate a little bit more upper body. Don't skip leg day, but you can kind of have a little bit more of an imbalance in that regards, depending on what else you have outside of your workouts.
Yeah. Yeah. So looking at our sample hypertrophy program here, this person still got, warm up, power, core work to start their day. They still have a push and a pull on each day. They might just be doing a little more sets than someone who's not caring about hypertrophy. And then they might have additional upper body volume at the end. And again, key point here that this person's still squatting and hinging every day too, if they're doing a full body program. It's maybe they're doing a push and a hinge and then a squat and a pull, and then just a little extra upper body volume at the end. So again, for all those reasons we already stated, you can tolerate a little more upper body volume. You might care more about the aesthetics of your upper body as long as your lower body has enough muscle mass to be strong and functional, right? So don't feel guilty for biasing towards upper body volume as long as that lower body is still present. So moving on to strength. Intensity in terms of load, the weight you're using, that's the main variable that matters for building strength. So we got to lift heavy, right? Prioritize simple push and pull variations that lend themselves to, things that you can do heavy safely, right? You're going to stay in lower rep ranges, more in that kind of 3 to 5-ish kind of range as you gain skill in these patterns. And you're just going to pick what patterns do you want to see the most improvement in. And because although all these things will get your upper body stronger, each one is kind of its own specific skill. So you're going to see benefit if you spend at least a couple months at a time working on the same pattern. If Peter wants to get good at doing that push up with his son on his back, obviously getting stronger at bench pressing would give him stronger chest, shoulders, and triceps to help with that. But really working on the skill of the push-up specifically and the core stability that takes and the skill of pushing his hands against the floor to drive his body up, it's just a little bit different neurologically than the bench press. So although they're in the same family, when you're really working on peak strength and a specific movement pattern, practicing that movement pattern over and over will help. Okay. Any other thoughts on that, Peter?
Some people that are just kind of stuck in this head forward, rounded forward shoulder position, they'll notice, man, I can't get my arm very much overhead because we're lacking so much range, like you talked about in your college days. So most people, when they're starting off, prioritizing more of that stuff in that horizontal, more away from you, parallel with the ground type stuff, like your push-ups and rows, and slowly work on developing more range and mobility so that you can get overhead. Not saying this is an excuse to not go overhead, but start in a range that you can perform it safely and then start to graduate and work towards those so that you can be very balanced and structurally in a safe position.
Love it. Yeah. So around those main patterns you're picking that you can do safely and execute well, you're just going to add supportive volume as needed / tolerated. But again, the lifting heavy is the main thing that moves the needle for strength, right? So the sample program here looks pretty similar to the previous hypertrophy program, but just doing a little less volume because their main goals really are like the peak strength patterns. They're going to maybe do a couple more warm-up sets and really build a couple heavier sets of 3 to 5. This person bench press and pull-ups are kind of their two main patterns they're progressing on. They still have a push and a pull each day. There's still that balance overall in their routine, but they're just prioritizing the peak strength a little more than the total volume in their day, right? So in summary, to wrap it all up, push and pull. Again, if that's all you took away from this is that you look at your program and you're like, man, I did bench press, dumbbell bench press, push-ups, overhead press, and then pull-ups. Man, I did 4 pushes and 1 pull. Even that sucker out, right? Push and pull, have a good balance of those foundational movement patterns. That's a great takeaway if that's all you took away, right? Ideally getting horizontal and vertical angles of those patterns to kind of really train the shoulder 3-dimensionally, build up stability everywhere. If your main goal is mobility and injury prevention, then you're going to train at end range and challenge stability in those ranges and still get strong. If your main goal is hypertrophy, you're going to do more sets, still start with big compound push and pull movements, add isolation stuff as needed. And if your main goal is strength, pick which patterns you want to work on, stay in a lower rep range, and go heavy, right? So again, you might prioritize one of these areas. You might prioritize one of them just for a season and then shift towards another. That's okay, right? But just know that these are the levers you have at your disposal to pull. Any other thoughts?
Love it. Just challenge yourself. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the learning. It's so rewarding and so many mental health benefits, so many confidence benefits that you can get, try to put on a couple pounds of muscle mass and you won't regret it. You'll feel so much better, be so much more stable for throwing those kids around, grabbing who knows what, those big heavy pots, pans. It's amazing how much it can just make life easier.
Oh, love it. Okay, just do more than bench press and bicep curls. Push and pull, train around that as needed. Cool. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.